Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Strong, Grounded, Unstoppable podcast with me, Susie Mackey, and again today with the lovely Kim Isles, who is in Canada, remember? And who's been in the wellness industry for a long, long time, and who has hosted not one, but two radio shows. Kim, I think over 17 years you did that?
Yeah, I started in the health industry in 93, and then I started the radio show in 2005.
Great.
It started out with my husband and I, but then it became just wellness with Kim for
Yeah.
17 years. Yeah.
For 17 years. And I think it was your idea, I think, to say, Susie, let's record some podcasts with me interviewing you, and you tell your story as to, in chapters as to why your life has brought you to where I am now, so close to launching the Mastering Mental Toughness program online. And I'm so excited about that. But yeah, Kim, so shall we press on with chapter 2 of Susie's story?
Well, yeah, exactly. But I want to just kind of reiterate that. So that's the thing, Susie. I think like there are so many people doing courses, right, and coaching and whatever. But I don't think everybody gets an opportunity to learn about that person that they're not only paying money to, but that they're investing some time and talking about their life. And so I think it's so valuable what you're doing, number one, with the podcast, along with the course, but just you and I talking about you, because setting up that relationship, right? You want to have a relationship with your, not only your podcast, listeners, but anybody that wants to take the course. I think they truly need to know you. So that's it.
I totally agree. And I think also one of the things that I have been able to do is share my story a number of ways and show credibility through the vulnerability of sharing my story. Because I don't mind, I'm not ashamed of anything that happened or I did. And the main thing is, what has this taught me? What have I learned from this? Now, that takes quite some time to understand that there are lessons in everything that we experience. And I did used to say to my daughters as they grow up, it's not the experience that matters so much as what we learn from it. And so, and sometimes I've been a bloomin' slow learner, especially with men.
And we do get our lessons in different times, and
Yeah.
like not even often, all the time, that lesson has to come through at a time when you're willing to accept it. So when you're willing to learn from it, because sometimes that same thing can show up over and over, like bang your head against the wall, and then you're in a different place and you learn from that. So
Absolutely.
right?
There's that saying, isn't it? When the student is ready, the teacher appears. And
Yes.
another one,
Yes.
which I think I quoted in my book, my story in my Women of Spirit book, until you learn the lesson keeps coming to you. So last week we got as far as my first childhood memory when I was 2 and being shouted at and told I was stupid. And then then we have sort of kindergarten and transition before I went to prep school. And I was actually quite a confident little girl. And I remember being told, we were all told at kindergarten, we were not allowed to go through this great big dike, this ditch. But that's where the conkers were. And I wanted to collect conkers. And
so what are those? Because a lot of my
conkers
Canadian
are
friends,
the chestnuts, not horse chestnuts, but chestnuts, which are all brown and shiny and luscious. And so I did. And so I had to write 5 lines as best I could. Whatever it was. And it's interesting because I'm fairly certain it was I must not, rather than the affirming I must. It's like people say, don't forget rather than remember, which is far more powerful. And actually, we often do not remember to say remember, but anyway. And so the lovely teacher, when my parents came to the school, she stood, because they had to go up on the wall, and she stood in front of them so that my parents wouldn't see that I'd been naughty, because it wasn't really like me. Anyway, so I had very mixed teachers as I went through school, and it was a funny memory, but it was one I'll never forget. And I think, sure, I remember her name as well. So then I went to prep school, and no, it was mixed, but it was a private school in the New Forest. And the headmistress there was terribly old fashioned, terribly strict. And we had boaters in the summer, straw hats and blazers in red, and white gloves and red and white gingham dresses. And we had to wear bloomers over our knickers. It was
Yep.
very, very sort of little ladies like that. And we were supposed to be being brought up to be little ladies, but they actually ruled by not so much fear, but do as you are told.
Right. So
Fear
no
and
creativity, like
no,
for you.
no crossness. They were a lot of the teachers were cross.
Right.
But I was also I quite enjoyed that school, except for when I was about 8 or 9, and my hair had grown to sort of neck, shoulder, or just on my shoulders. And mummy sent me to school with nothing, it was just loose and flying around. And the teacher called me up to her desk, and I had to walk, because my desk was near the back. So I had to walk up between all the pupils who were sort of trying not to smile, but also I could see the look of relief that they were, because she was cross. And so I had to walk up trying to, not show red face, but my little face used to go red so easily. And as I approached the desk, she pulled out a small chair. Those chairs were very tiny for us little children. And she pulled out the drawer, and she pulled out a pair of scissors, big scissors. And I thought she was going to cut my hair, and I was growing it. And
Right.
I just thought, no, but actually she then pulled out a ball of string, and she made me stand on the chair so that I was visible. And she scraped my hair into 2 little sticky out bunches just by my ears.
Oh
Like,
my
do you remember
gosh.
Shrek's ears? And she tied them up as best she could with string. And then she sent me back down the path to my desk, with all the others, one sort of sniggering, probably in relief, and me trying hard not to cry.
Yes.
And I know now that experience made me subconsciously feel inferior and unworthy as a child. And
Yep.
everything that happened since, with the sibling, with life, obedience, everything piled upon that fundamental feeling.
Yes.
And went on into adult. And I didn't even know it was there, of course, because it was subconscious. But it probably led a lot of my decisions in life. So that was quite interesting. In fact, in my books, Women of Spirit, there's another childhood experience by Bertie Peregrine when she was very young, and it's appalling. And that formed her adulthood hugely. But actually, she was a very famous designer's muse and model. She couldn't do catwalk. She couldn't speak up at a dinner party because of what happened when she was at primary school. So fascinating how things affect us, and we don't really even know it until we are more grown up, and we are real grown up, and we're looking back at our childhood, unpicking the pieces of it and finding out why and how that affected. Funnily enough, when I was helping mummy clear out the farm of 63 years, and we found my old school reports. And my primary school one was very good because I was obedient, but also because I was quite a nice little girl. And it said, Susan can be either a helper or a leader. You know, she's kind and she's confident. And I said to Mummy, what happened to that little girl in all these years since? Because it was
And
shot. It was
what
quite
age were you then? Like what age were you helping your mom?
eight. Oh, I was. This was 2017. I was
Oh,
late
okay.
50s, early 60s.
Yeah.
Long time. So anyway, um, then I left that prep school early. I don't know why. I don't know why. I can't have been that intelligent, but actually, hang on a minute, slap hands. Maybe I
Yep.
was, because I was ready to go to
Hmm.
Queensmount School for Girls in Bournemouth. Oh my God. Frying pan into the fire. That place ruled by fear and humiliation, not just for the pupils or girls, but for the staff as well. The two principals, Miss and Miss, I mean, they're long gone now because they were quite old then, but they were fierce and loathsome, I will have to say.
Wow. Yeah.
Actually, one of them had short black hair like a man's, and she had black eyes. You couldn't see. And this face was like, oh God. And when you're in trouble, you went for a form mark or have your hand wrapped with a wooden ruler, you know. So I had that because I used to write poetry in my maths lessons. I couldn't bear maths, couldn't get
Mhm.
it, didn't know how to do it. So I just used to write poetry, and I was found out and had to go to the form mistress. But
But there's where that little girl went, right?
yeah,
Partly.
oh yeah, I went into writing fairly rubbish poetry. I don't think I kept any of it, but I was creative and
Yeah.
nurturing. So anyway, I'd managed to do okay, but I didn't enjoy school at all. And I did as much as I needed to just to
Hmm.
get the exam passes because it was
Yeah.
so expected. You didn't dare do anything else. Um, but the challenge was that when I was 11, and I can remember where we were very clearly, and the sofa cover as it was in the lounge then, in the farmhouse where I grew up. It was sort of gold velvet with a gold tassel sort of binding, you know, trim. And I was sitting on the sofa, and my mother opened the book that she was reading, and I remember it as well, Rona Jaff. Um, I can't remember the title of the book, but she pointed to a paragraph, and this sentence, and it said, "What kind of man doesn't touch you, or husband doesn't touch you for 2 weeks just because you've told him not to?" And my mother said, "That's your father, except it's been, I think she said 2 years, a long time." And what was I supposed to say?
And
Um,
how old were
11.
you then?
I was 11.
Oh my gosh.
You know, to share that with your daughter, it's
Yeah.
like, so I just didn't know what to say. So I probably didn't say anything. I maybe just got up and left. That was the first indication that she was going to engage me as her ally, and therefore a traitor to my father
Yes.
in the long-term affair that she
Yep.
was having. Um, and
How do
this
you
was
think that made how do you think you felt anything at that time? Like now looking back, but like what do you think you felt like?
I was disgusted because I felt he was revolting. He used to take me to school, and I knew what they were doing. And I sat frozen in the car whilst he took me into Bournemouth to school. It was a
Mm.
12-mile journey. I didn't want to speak to him. As I grew a bit older, I was probably quite rude because I didn't want to speak to him. I didn't want to be anywhere near him.
Mhm.
And when I was 16, my mother said in front of a colleague in her office in Bournemouth, and I'd gone in there after school, she said, I want to tell you something. Be nice to my friend, or I won't buy you any more clothes. So that again, I didn't know it at the
Wow.
time, but it
Yeah.
reinforced that her lover came before I did,
Yeah.
that I must be obedient and, again, to this revolting man. Um, and my father, I loved my father. He was a kind man. He was emasculated by mummy. I want to say here and now, my mother was an amazing woman. Beautiful, glamorous, talented, but not happy.
Mhm.
Um, and the challenge with that came from her mother never told her she loved her.
Yeah.
This is where it goes down the generations. Mummy was a twin, but Nana, her mother, and Packer was very successful as a research chemist for ICI, and Nana worked as a beautician for Guerlain in those days in a department store. When she realized she was pregnant, she didn't want babies, and so she tried the old-fashioned method of gin and nutmeg in a hot bath, you know, to end the pregnancy. Didn't work. Didn't have scans in those days. So when Nana went to hospital to have the baby, first out popped Uncle Michael, who was blonde like Nana. And then the doctor said, "Oh, wait a moment, there's another one." And out came Mummy, who was dark-haired like Packer. And so from that moment on, Uncle Michael, not his fault either. He had the breast. Packer had to give Mummy the bottles. So from the very start, no love or approval of her whole life for my mother. Now, my mother used to fill that hole, that deep, deep hole, bless her, with retail therapy. I
Mhm.
once sat with my father and I said, we women talk in a fairly laughing way about retail therapy. For mummy, it really is. She spends money on money. Oh my goodness, on so much stuff to try to fill that hole.
Yep.
Momentarily, of
Yep.
course, it will. Doesn't last. So there's more that has. I mean, but she was an amazing woman, but she was a controlling mother and a cruel wife. She'd say to Daddy in front of their friends, "Well, I only married you to get away from home." And stuff in front of her daughters as well. That's not good.
No.
And it was embarrassing. So, life went on, and it created an awful lot of difficulty between my mother and me because I was piggy in the middle. I tried hard to show Daddy that I loved him. Um, he was a lovely, kind man, but he was
Mhm.
maybe weak. Perhaps if he'd stood
Mhm.
up to Mummy, she probably would have preferred that. Um, so they were both a beautiful couple I've got a picture when they were engaged. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
just so sad. But I know that each of them individually and with what they had did the best they could at that time, all the way through their marriage. And when they had their 60th anniversary, my mother wrote a card to Daddy saying, "We did it," kind of thing. And he bought her a 7,500 diamond solitaire for the diamond anniversary. And, they had some good moments. They were both very proud of us, their daughters.
Mhm.
And my mother was incredibly supportive and helpful whilst I was awful lot of illness during my life. The divorces, my parents were both there for me. Um, and that was wonderful. And
How do you
supporting.
think keeping that secret affected you, though, Susie? Like
Oh,
you had to keep that from your dad, right?
when I was 18, and funnily enough, I got engaged. I did the very same thing, probably to get away from home, although I did love this chap. But I was only 18. I didn't know anything.
No.
And Daddy and he and I drove down to Bournemouth, about 20 minutes, to see the film Jaws. And in
Hmm.
those days, you couldn't book a ticket. So we queued to get in, and we missed being able to see it by 6 people. So we window shopped on the way back to the car and then drove home. Parked outside the house was the lover's car. The kitchen door was locked,
Oh
and
no.
Daddy had to knock on his own door to be allowed in. He, the lover, answered the door with a cut glass of Daddy's whiskey in his hand. "Oh, hello, Ron." We all three Daddy just walked straight past him, went into the lounge, sat in his wing chair and turned on the television. And again, funny the things you remember. It was the Sweeney with John Thor and
Hmm.
Dennis Waterman. And he just sat there stony faced watching this program. My chap and I were on the sofa. We didn't want to talk. The lover sat on the other wing chair, still drinking the whiskey. Mummy's shoes were underneath Daddy's chair. She was upstairs. Get it? Honestly, and that
But
was when I
see,
was 18. So,
yeah, so your dad was holding all that in. Do you think he knew before that? And he
oh,
just,
I think so, because they used to go salmon fishing. She used to go salmon fishing with this man's wife
yeah.
and him, and then them together. But she used to go salmon
Oh,
fishing and then come back when it's long dark at 11 o'clock at night. And so I think she was fairly brazen about it. By the time I was 17, 18, it wasn't a secret anymore.
no, no.
But it went on until, when did I have my girls? My second marriage. I was in my early 30s. No, I was in my mid 30s, because we'd had B and we'd done the extension. So mid to late 30s, and we'd done the extension on our house. And I was in the sort of little bathroom, dressing room before you went in. And I remember being there. We had a phone there because it was upstairs. And I answered the phone. It was Mummy. "Oh, darling," she said, "I have some terribly sad news." And I said, "Oh, no, what?" And she said, "John has died." And I thought to myself, I just said, "Oh." And I thought to myself, what am I supposed to say? What part of you can honestly think that I would have any interest or any feeling about that whatsoever?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I don't know what happened after that, but I was always, you see, we were brought up to be polite, so I never really confronted my mother about anything.
Hmm.
And actually, if you did, you were not going to come off very well, because she didn't really care what came out of her mouth. Oh my
Right.
word. And Daddy used to say to me, "I bought this very expensive part of her dinner service she's collecting, and yet she now tells me she wants something else, and I feel like smashing it on the floor." So I got his angst and anger as well.
Right.
So
Right.
I think I now know, with the 3 unfortunate marriages that I went into, number one, I had no self-worth, no assertiveness, no boundaries,
Right.
but I could not fix it for my father. So I attracted either dysfunctional or controlling men.
Mhm. It's the
Uh,
energy of the chaos too,
the
right?
energy, yeah. And one relate counselor said to me, "Susie, you are not equipped to deal with any of that."
No,
Because
no.
I felt very lost. And so it didn't give me that lovely example of a loving marriage, and, how that looked. And so the abusive marriages that I went into were kind of I just put up with them. You know, I had, with the 3 marriages and with other boyfriends, I have had every kind of domestic abuse there is. Um,
So
and
do you think that little girl, Susie, kind of because you didn't feel worthy and you didn't feel like all of those things, right? So do you think
mm,
you attracted situations to make that prove yourself right about
oh,
that?
I don't haven't thought about that, Kim. That's very likely. I
Like on a
know.
subconscious, like it's not,
Oh,
you know
on a
what I mean? Like
subconscious.
subconscious.
Yeah, because you talk about energy and I know about energy, and I know that I said when I was online date, you see, I wanted love. I had so much love to
Hmm.
give, and I
Yeah.
wanted real, wonderful, healthy, loving, respectful love. And I never gave up. I mean, and people on Facebook used to sort of say, "Oh, Susie, you never gave up on love."
Right.
However, I did online dating for 8 years, and I had made some nice friendships, had a couple of not so good relationships. And I said to people, even over the internet, even over the ether, I attracted not very nice men. And the final one of those, of course, was where I had police intervention as I
Mhm.
left, but we'll save that for another day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, as far as my darling parents are concerned, when mummy was seeing me work so hard and survive, you know, these marriages and relationships, she was proud of me. She said I never l- went through those with, oh, why me, poor me, but
Hmm.
what can I learn from this and how can I help others? Because I then had done
Hmm.
book 1 in 2017, book 2 of Women of Spirit in 2019, both of which she patroned, and the second book is dedicated to her.
Nice. Yeah.
And she would help me with editing and proofreading. She was really into it. And that was so that also the Our Spirited Life podcast, which is the one that preceded this, which you can still find on YouTube. She helped me with that financially because she could leave a legacy.
Hmm.
That's what she wanted to leave. Um,
Hmm.
Part way through helping me with those things, she was so proud of me. I then helped her through the time that Daddy was dying, um, and helped her a lot. And we each held a hand of his as he died.
Aw.
And you know, we then went and had a very large whiskey and I think a piece of fudge. You know, that was our lunch, and that was, you know, and cried and
Yep.
you know, and then helped her a lot with the funeral, which she wanted me, although Daddy had written his funeral and what he wanted, so that was great.
Was that
Um,
all part of your healing, do you think?
I
Like that
think so, but what?
reconnection?
Yes, it was, because she said I couldn't have done this without you,
Hmm.
and so she softened a bit, because then she thought, she said, "Oh, I suppose I'm a widow now." So she sort of gave herself a role to play. And she did actually want to start to have some freedom and a life. Although she
Hmm.
had always gone off and gone abroad and done holidays and done what she'd wanted. It had never stopped her because Daddy had the farm and couldn't or didn't like flying in the latter days. So they sort of got on with their lives. It would have been easier for everybody if they had divorced. You know, perhaps when we were teenagers, God, it would have been easier. But they didn't, because actually they didn't divorce. Those family, those that gender, they really didn't divorce, or very rarely, I think.
No, and
Uh,
the thing is, I think, like, because we all have a perception of what a perfect marriage is or a perfect family or whatever, and unfortunately, you know, that's television or whatever where we get that in our mind, and then now social media, like people post all these beautiful rosy pictures,
mm,
and you know, oh wonderful me, but like behind the scenes,
mm.
people have lives like you and I had,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so like that's what I think is so awesome about people like us or whoever telling your
Mm,
stories because
mm.
number one, it shows women, because your
Mm,
target is, it
mm,
shows them that you can get through anything.
mhm.
And then B, that, you know what, people don't have perfect lives. People
No,
do not live
no,
like in a bubble.
no,
So
no. It's an illusion. I
yeah.
can see, and I have friends, and I ask them. I can see. In fact, there's one on Our Spirited Life podcast, Yvonne Bignell. She had wonderful parents, a wonderful childhood, and she said to me quite recently, if you cut her open, there would be joy. That she just exudes love and joy, and that's
Hmm.
fantastic. Just going back to Mummy and Daddy, 2 months after Daddy died, Mummy was then diagnosed with peritoneal cancer, terminal,
Oh,
stage 4,
interesting.
which sort of pissed her off quite a lot. But she said, I can't grumble. I've had a good life. And I thought, wow, bravo you, Mummy. Um, and so she had her chemo. I went down when I could, because then there was COVID. But then Lottie called me, my daughter, 3 months before Mummy died. So I went down in the December, and just packed a very small case, because I was going down for Christmas anyway. And I thought, oh, well, I'll be back. Well, I never came back to Cheltenham until April, because I stayed down there, and I slept in a bed next to Mummy. And it was, it went into eventually 24/7 care. And then the 3 weeks before she died, we moved my bed out, because she then had to have access all round her bed for the 3 carers to bathe her and turn her. And then a week before she went, on the 4th of March, the day after mine and the siblings' birthday, she had the syringe driver. And, she was so brave, because she said, oh, it's that time, is it? But a few days before that, I had bought a baby monitor, so that I could hear her if she called out for me. Actually, when I slept next to her, because the dog was allowed on the bed, Tilly, this little King Charles Cavalier, absolutely adored by everybody, but she would snore, and I had to wear earplugs
Oh,
because of the snoring. So I gave Mummy a stick, so that if she needed me in the night, she could prod me and wake me up.
oh, awesome.
God, we did laugh. We had a lot of laughter. And, having cancer, and me going down there and just giving her unconditional love,
Yeah.
and doing
Yeah.
everything I could to make her comfortable. The cooking I did for her, these little meals, and the way I presented it. And
Yeah.
one time I took her to Italy. And so I went to Waitrose, and I bought Gavi wine, and I bought all the Italian, because she loved food and cooking. She was a great cook. And I put out a patterned tablecloth on my bed, and I laid out all this Italian food.
Oh,
And we
nice.
put on the film with Vanessa Redgrave and the girl from Mamma Mia who played the daughter. I put on Letters to Juliet. Beautiful film. And so we just went to Italy for a little while. Little things that made it, a bit of a better
Definitely.
journey. But
Yeah.
I remember pulling up her panty pads and her pajama bottoms, and kneeling on the floor, and she kissed the top of my head, and she said, darling, everyone needs a Susie in their life. And
Mm,
so we had such a healing time. It wasn't
yes.
all roses.
No.
Um, I
No.
remember saying something to her that was challenging, and she said, you can just bugger off now. And so I did. I just thought, right, I didn't leave the flat,
No.
but
No.
I did just emotionally put a little wall around myself, because it actually wasn't very nice and very fair, and da da da. But
No.
anyway,
But you can
it
put those things in a compartment, right?
we
Rather
can,
than,
and it was a privilege going to the doctor with her and caring for her and crying with her when the doctor said, I think it's time for you to put your affairs in order.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
this will resonate with a lot of people who were with their parents when their parents were in their final months, weeks, days, and
Yep.
hours. And the
Yep.
Macmillan nurse came to me a few days before, perhaps when the syringe driver went in, and told me what to listen for. And that was the rattle, the breath rattle, the breathing. And I can remember in the early hours of the morning on March the 4th, I heard through the baby monitor, I heard this. And so I went through and I just sat with Mummy and I held her hand
Yep.
until she went. And I actually sort of said, "Are you gone, Mummy? Are you gone?" And then said her some things. And so,
Yep. Yep.
but my God, Kim, I am so glad I had that experience.
Oh, absolutely. What a gift.
It
Like,
was,
to
because it
wrap
was so
everything
healing
up
and
for
we
you.
just were so close and we laughed so much. And she FaceTimed with her lovely nieces and the sibling, they would FaceTime, and then sadly on the day she died, everything sort of else took off, which is another story. But so I loved my parents, and really, when you are an adult, there's a Will Smith years ago, a little Facebook thing of Will Smith walking along the street telling people, "Stop blaming your parents. As an adult, once you're grown up, you have choices. You do,
Yes.
you have choices.
Mm-hmm.
Don't blame your parents anymore. Do the work, do the healing, or, do something else, but stop
Yep.
blaming your parents."
Yes,
And
absolutely.
that was just so right. You might not like them sometimes, or you might not agree. That's
No.
quite funny. Mummy being her controlling self, she would rule from her bed. And I picked out a load of washing sheets to wash. And she said, "Don't wash all them once because they won't fit in." And I'd only picked out a set. And I said, "Mummy, do you know, I'm 62 and you brought me up very well. I think I can do the laundry fine, thank you."
Good
And I
for
just
you.
laughed at it. I just laughed because she
Yep.
meant it. She was telling me what to do.
Yep.
But there's moments like, and this was incredibly healing. So, say 2 weeks before she died, and I had the baby monitor and I heard her cry out in pain. And I went through and I got the morphine. And I was bending over her, and that I just started to break. First
Yep.
time. And she put her hands out and she said, "Oh, my baby."
Yep.
Can you imagine from going from that time when I was a crying baby, being told
Yes.
I was stupid, go back to bed, to
But
in
that
these
was
final
her healing,
days?
right? Her healing to go into the
Yeah.
next life.
So I feel very blessed. And my message to anybody is, whatever, unless it's really, really heinous, whatever you have, if, relationship you've gone through, if you can and feel able to go and make amends or care for a
Mhm.
dying parent, please do,
Mhm.
because it will be
Mhm.
so healing for both of you.
Yes.
And it's a choice that you can make. You can't control the outcome depending on how far gone your parent is. And I know some friends that have had a disappointment,
Mhm.
but think about it.
Yeah.
And if you can do it, talk about it with, your siblings or whoever, but just think it through. And if you
Mhm.
can, do it, because it's
Yes.
incredibly healing. Because I will tell you something. Oh, I must have been in my 30s. And I actually once said to myself, do I have to wait until she's dead before I feel free? Because I was so suppressed. One healer said to me, "You were so suppressed."
Yep.
Because she was
Yep.
a very strong character. She was Aquarius. And apparently do as I say, do as not, do as I say, do as I say. It's my way or the highway, kind of thing.
Mhm.
They're very, very like that. And I think it's very difficult to deal with if you're a nurturer and, you know, soft Pisces, and Daddy was
Yeah.
Taurus, so he was very slow to anger, but also, you know, it was sad.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they're gone. I love them to bits. I talk to them. One psychic did say to me, they're together up there. Um, and they're with the little boy. She said it's a little boy that I lost between my two girls.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, oh my goodness me. So yeah, it was, that's a
Well, like
lovely
we
thing.
talked about the Kabbalah in the well, the first show we did, but
Mm, mm,
I mean, they're probably still together because they didn't work everything out in this
mm,
lifetime, right? Your father
yes.
repressed things, and
Yeah.
so now
Yeah.
they'll have to kind of do it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, that part from not good, from 2 to 11, and then what went on, there are always later on, if you can learn them sooner rather than later, I think that's would
Hmm.
help you, you know, that's much more healthy. So if you have a hurt or a pain, look towards healing it, find help. Um, because unfortunately the sibling didn't. And
Hmm.
so she spent her whole life in pain, and it grew and grew and grew
Hmm.
until it was poison, and she poisoned herself.
Hmm.
And that's the really sad thing, because it could have been so different.
Hmm.
Um, and again, that's another story, but do what you can to work things through and get help. Um, I was lucky I was a born optimist. And I think I was also naturally resilient. Whilst I was suppressed and lacking in confidence and I was resilient. So I could keep bouncing back.
Hmm.
Um, and that's partly why living those experiences, I've wanted to create this program, Mastering Mental Toughness for People, because, oh my God, it's so powerful. Um, and I
Do you
can
think part
say
of your therapy and part of your healing were your
everything.
books?
Oh,
Like your
yes.
books, I think,
Yeah.
because you saw how other people went through things as
Oh,
well.
the books, the stories in the books. And I'm reading this incredible book at the moment. Damien goes to the gym and I go for a swim, and I'm always finished before him. And so I sit and I have this book that I read. And the one I'm reading at the moment is by Carmine Gallo, who wrote Talk Like Ted. And this is called The Storyteller's Secret. And it's about huge corporations and successful people and
Hmm.
how they started their lives, or the stories behind them. Oh, they are fabulous and incredible. And I'm reading this because I want to get out there doing keynotes and talks, and maybe even a
Mm,
TEDx talk one day. Yes, a TEDx talk one day.
absolutely.
And this is a fabulous, if you like stories, okay, Women of Spirit, yes, but talk, what's it called? The Storyteller's Secret. Fascinating and
Hmm.
human. It's what makes us human, you know?
Hmm.
So, yeah, I think perhaps that's a good place to finish. Except,
Yes.
Kim, some more wise words from you, please, darling, because you have given me
Mm.
so much, you know, through the week. We connect through the week, and I want to do one with Kim. There's so much to talk about, but yeah, what's your take on parenthood, parenting?
Well, so much you and I have chatted about. I went through a similar thing with my aunt who was like my
Mm-hmm.
second mom. So I had the whole experience with her of being with her, living with her to keep her from a nursing home and things like that. So I had a lot of the same stories. And just yesterday, I told you earlier, but we went through all of her personal effects. She's been gone now. It'll be 2 years this summer, but
Mm-hmm.
um, anyway, just like her stuff was stored and until we were all
Mm-hmm.
okay to do it. And I think things happen for us when they're meant to happen, right?
Yes.
So a lot of that healing and whatever that came from that I can now feel comfortable talking about I couldn't have talked about those with
Mm,
you before all of this
mm,
either.
mm, mm.
So I had to go through that and figure out what were my lessons and what were my lessons about
Yeah,
my family and putting
yeah,
all that together. So I think,
yeah.
um, as we talked about, totally different. This will be a totally different show, but situational awareness. So situational awareness is like also spiritually, like we were talking about security with women, like knowing your surroundings and checking in the car before you get in,
Yes.
but also spiritually situational awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So staying awake and paying attention to signs and why things happen and they happen in the right time, and your lessons will come when they're meant to be lessons.
Mm,
So
mm.
I mean,
Yes,
just
they will.
stay spiritually aware.
Yeah, and I think so. Therefore, patience to understand that things will come when they're meant to, and what's
Yeah,
meant for you will not pass you by. Patience has never been my strongest virtue, I have to
me
say.
either.
Maybe I've pushed for things because
Yeah,
I'm determined, and don't have that
and there's
element.
nothing
I'm
wrong with
learning,
that.
as
It'll come when
I,
it's
I
supposed
believe
to
in
anyway.
learning for life. Oh, learning. It will. It will. Okay, my darling, thank you so much for listening. And to our
Yes.
audience, thank you so much for listening. I'm sure some of that resonated. If you would like to get in touch with me or about anything, please do. You can comment below this podcast, and my contact details are all over the place on the website, because the podcast is always put on the podcast page of my website and onto YouTube. And so
And we've been sharing it on Facebook.
yes, and Facebook. Yes, thank you, Kim. And so, yeah, please get in touch if anything you need to say. And also, if you have a story that you want to share, please, I'd love to invite you to share it as a podcast guest. So please get in touch with that as well. And remember, if you like this, please like and share, and remember to subscribe as well. Oh, I did it all. Thank you, Kim, so much. And thanks to our audience. Take care, and we'll see you very soon. All the very best.
Yes.
Bye. Bye bye. Stay there, Kim.